The Nightmare Scenario for the World. This is by analyst Egon von Greyerz. He says gold has no role in portfolio of wealthy clients. This is what the chief investor office for Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management in the week that gold in US dollars went up by over $100 made a new high of $1,984. Many found this statement puzzling, as another Goldman department previously has told clients not to sell anything gold. The CIO went on to say, our view is that gold is only appropriate if you have a very strong view that the US dollar is going to be rebased, and we don't have that view, he said. The imploding dollar. So here we have a dollar that has lost 85% against gold in this century and 40% since 2018. How can the CIO of the mighty Goldman Sachs say that the dollar is not being rebased? History certainly tells us that she's not telling the truth. Or does she believe that the dollar won't go down in coming years? As CIO, she can clearly see what everyone is seeing, namely that the prospects for the dollar are doomed with what is happening in the US economy, causing surging deficits and unlimited money printing. The truth clearly lies elsewhere. No asset manager is interested in protecting their clients' assets by investing in the ultimate form of wealth preservation, which is, of course, physical gold. The reason is very simple. Goldman's private wealth management, like all other asset managers, are not interested in holding physical gold for their clients for the simple reason that the bank can't earn sufficient revenue on just holding clients' gold. Instead, they want to put expensive proprietary products and their own managed funds into clients' portfolios, and also buy and sell shares regularly to churn commissions, of course. No bank managing client portfolios tells their clients that in the last 20 years gold has outperformed all major asset classes, including stocks. The Dow, for example, has lost 70% against gold since 1999, excluding dividends. Instead, asset managers stick to their conventional portfolios of stocks, bonds, and some alternative assets. The Dow Gold Ratio is now 13, on its way to at least 1-to-1, as in 1980, and probably 0.5-to-1, as I discussed in last week's article, he says. 100 trillion gold in Weimar Republic. What a 0.5-to-1 Dow Gold Ratio means in price is impossible to say today. It could be $20,000 gold and 10,000 Dow. It could also be $50,000 gold and 25,000 Dow. And if hyperinflation takes hold, which I think is very likely, we could see $100 billion gold. At that point, I would expect the ratio to collapse in line with most stocks to be substantially below 0.5-to-1. Gold at $100 billion might sound sensational, but remember that the world has seen a lot higher gold in fiat money. In the Weimar Republic in 1923, gold reached $100 trillion mark. But measuring the gold price in worthless paper money obviously serves no purpose. 100 trillion mark might sound like a lot of money. Well, it is if you have to pay it in actual paper money. But the problem is that paper money at that point has lost its useful function. Today, paper money is gradually being abolished. In Sweden, for example, no one carries or pays with paper money. Even for small amounts like a loaf of bread, a credit card is used, or a debit card. Now, as paper money dies, abolishing paper money has been a planned process by governments and central banks. Firstly, it makes bank runs impossible. The banks will simply just turn off the ATMs. They can obviously also stop electronic transfers. The most important aspect of electronic money is the big brother is watching syndrome. And now the state has total electronic control of the citizens' money, not just from a tax point of view, but the state can decide to block individual accounts or to charge fines or taxes without the permission of the account holder, of course. As regards hyperinflation, it's only a matter of time before inflation picks up as the frantic printing accelerates further in line with the collapsing economy. The current explosion of the Fed balance sheet combined with surging government debt will increase money supply exponentially. And this will also lead to the dollar decline accelerating. Dollar fall and money supply. The dollar index peaked at 103 in March this year and has since fallen 10% to 93 today. As the dollar continues to decline, U.S. inflation will pick up So far, the official U.S. inflation rate is just above zero. Anyone buying food or paying insurance, for example, knows that this is not a true figure, but the real reason why inflation is low in spite of the major increase in money supply is a low velocity of money. Although money printed is not reaching the consumer, but instead staying with banks and other major institutions to shore up their balance sheets, very little reaches the real economy. Now, if we look at the velocity of MZM, the money zero maturity, we see how it reaches 3.5 in 1981 when inflation was high and interest rates reached 20%. Today, the velocity has collapsed to an all-time low of 0.9. So what we're seeing is that the money printed is not spent but used to prevent the financial system from collapsing. As the dollar falls, velocity of money will pick up. As the dollar value falls, the velocity of money increases. We'll see inflation increase rapidly. Higher inflation will lead to higher interest rates, and I expect this in the UK. I experienced this in the UK in the 1970s when inflation was in the mid to high teens for many years. My first mortgage was at 21% in 1974. Central banks are today managing to artificially suppress interest rates and in short term defy the laws of supply and demand. High demand for credit should in a free market lead to high interest rates and thus taper demand for credit. But in a world manipulated by central banks, the laws of nature are temporarily set aside. This leads to false markets and false prices. The likely course of events in the next few years is this: the nightmare scenario. Accelerating deficits and debts, falling dollar and other currencies, unlimited money printing to save banks and failing financial systems, more printing to save failing companies, ever higher subsidies for furloughed and unemployed, universal basic income, UBI, introduced in most Western nations. UBI means that everyone is paid a basic wage whether they work or not. This will lead to ever fewer people working. Higher unemployment means more printing. More printing leads to more currency debasement. This leads to higher velocity of money, higher inflation. Central banks lose control of rates as long and of bond market sells off. High long rates push short rates up. Rates reach 5%, then quickly 10% and on to 15 to 20% at least. At 10% rate, interest costs on global debt of $275 trillion would be $27 trillion. $27 trillion is 34% of global GDP, totally unsustainable, that is. So much more printing money, bad debt surge leading to defaults, sovereign, corporate, and private. Unemployment escalates leading to more UBI and more money printing. Banks start falling, including the 1.5 to 2 quadrillion derivatives market. Money printing reaches quadrillions of dollars, leading to hyperinflation. The financial system collapses together with major parts of industry and society. Social unrest, civil wars, cyber wars, and major conflicts will be rampant. Political systems fail as governments lose control, leading to anarchy. The world wakes up to the fact that it's bankrupt. Obviously, governments and central banks will desperately try to introduce resets, new digital currencies, do a bit of hocus pocus with debt, and to pretend it's disappeared. The U.S. might even revalue its alleged stock of 8,000 tons of gold, but their bluff will be called. The effects of any measure governments take will only be temporary as the world realizes it's really bankrupt. I sincerely hope that all of the above is really a nightmare in the form of a dream and will never take place. Because if it does, the world is back to the dark ages, or the dark years are here as I wrote about in 2009 and revisited in 2018. The world goes backward 100 years, and if the world retraces a century of evolution or more, it's clearly in for at least 50 years of very hard times. But except for the initial shock and readjustment, life will go on for most people, but at a different level. Obviously, living standards will decline substantially, so will security. Many of life's treasures are free. The positive aspect is that moral and ethical values will return, with friends and family becoming the kernel of our society again, and many of the best and free things in life will still be there, such as nature, books, music, good conversation, close friendships, etc. With the lack of many of the superficial material values, we will appreciate the real value of the new simple life, even though it will seem a lot harder initially. And what I've outlined above is not a forecast, but a potential scenario which I sincerely hope will not come to pass, but the risk is certainly there. Gold will assume its crisis role. Gold and silver are now in the acceleration phase of a secular bull market. As always, there will be corrections on the way to much higher levels. In a period of such severe crisis which I outlined above, gold will obviously assume the role it always has, namely as money and the only money which will maintain its purchasing power and act as insurance and wealth preservation. But remember, it must be physical and stored outside the banking system in a very safe place and jurisdiction. At that point, it will be meaningless to measure gold in worthless dollars or euros. Instead, think of gold in ounces or grams and purchasing power terms. This was by Egon von Greyerz, founder and managing partner, Matterhorn Asset Management, Zurich, Switzerland. Matterhorn Asset Management global client base strategically stores an important part of their wealth in Switzerland, physical gold and silver outside the banking system. Matterhorn Asset Management pleased to deliver unique, exceptional service. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just reading what's on the bottom of their article. And this is republished with full credits given to goldswitzerland.com, and it's Creative Commons. And I've just done that for you, and I'll leave a link below for you for this. Please leave your comments. Thank you. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.